My name is Sami Steigmann. I am very honored to be here with a very good friend of mine, somebody that overcame many, many life challenges, but at the same time is a truly inspirational person. It is my distinct privilege to introduce to you Sensei John.
It's a great pleasure to be in your presence, Sami. It's an honor. So thank you for having me on your show.
I'm so happy to be here. Naturally, I want you to tell me about your life, when you started, where you are today. However, before we go into it, I would like you to explain to the audience and to me the meaning of the word sensei.
Well, sensei is a very simple word. People think it's like this big title. It's not, you know. A sensei actually means born first. It means that in what I'm doing, as far as whatever I'm teaching, I was born first doing it. That's all it really means. So in Japan, if you're a person who's teaching somebody how to water a bonsai tree, you could be a teacher of that, and they'd call you a sensei. Or school teachers, a sensei, a teacher, right? But I see the sensei in, as far as my martial art is concerned, is that we're simply guides. We're not healers. We're not, you know, we're not gurus or any of that. We're teaching others to find that guru inside themselves.
I'm looking at the sign and it says Harmony by Karate. Can you please explain to the audience, to me, what's the difference between karate and the other forms of martial arts?
Well, you can see it in the word harmony, right? So my focus and my main emphasis is on all inner development, right? It doesn't mean that what I'm doing is any better than anyone else. It's just different. So my focus is inner development. My focus is not primarily the fighting. The fighting piece or the protective piece is an essential piece, but it's not the piece that I am focused on marketing. I'm focused more on building the human being and working on their soul. That to me is the most important thing. Well, karate means empty-handed way. So the actual word karate means, it's from Japan, right? So it was actually developed in the island of Okinawa. But it was actually the Chinese that brought it to Okinawa, and the Japanese adopted it, and they called it karate, or karate do, do meaning way. So that's the origin of karate.
Very interesting, okay? So now, let the audience learn a little bit about yourself.
It's my pleasure, and thank you again. I started, my original start with martial arts is when I was 2 years old. But it wasn't like anything serious. It was just me. There's a picture of me and my father playing, and I had his karate gi on, and it was just, that was kind of like my introduction. But my real start was when I was 8 years old, and I was bullied severely on the streets of Brooklyn. And I'll tell you that it was very debilitating, and it was to a point where another boy took my head and slammed it into the curb till blood was coming out of the back of my head.
Wow.
And my stepmother at the time, because you know, my parents got divorced when I was very young. My mother went through struggles, and I was on the streets of the city. She got into drugs. And in fact, I was homeless between the ages of 4 and 6. Periods of time we were out of place. In fact, the African-American community took us in, and we stayed in the projects, and I had that experience, which was amazing for me as a youngster. But when my father gained custody of me, I left that neighborhood going into Brooklyn, you know, primarily Italians and Irish, and it was just brutal. I mean, it was just a really rough experience. So once that incident happened where the blood was coming out of the back of my head, my dad said, that's it. You need to do martial arts. And my dad had been doing martial arts for a couple of years with the Japanese. So he took, you know, we were low income, so he took a duffel bag and he just stuffed whatever he could find inside of it, hung it in the basement, and he's like, I'm going to give you some things you're going to do every day for a half hour, 45 minutes. But actually 30 minutes was just punching it. And the 30 minutes I had to punch that bag, my stepmother would leave the door open upstairs, and if they didn't hear the hitting of the bag, I'd be grounded. Because they were very concerned about my survival on the streets. It was that serious. And my father had me doing, you know, knuckle push-ups on the concrete outside the backyard. So, you know, by the time that bully came back, he actually came back to me and he said, not only did he want to fight me, and we were 8 years old, I want to fight you on glass. I'm like, all right. I'm like, we'll do it on glass. And he was much bigger than me, so as soon as we stepped on the glass, I went right at his face. Kind of like a Sugar Ray Leonard finishing his bout. I just didn't stop hitting him. The challenge was he was so big that he literally fell on top of me. I didn't know what to do. He's laying on top of me, and I looked up at him, and he just looked like a mess. And he just got up, and he walked away. He's like, all right. And that was the beginning for me. That was the beginning of my martial arts training, you know. And so I actually did it for a few months, and then my dad thought at the time that his Japanese teacher says, you know, it's not good to teach your son to mix that relationship up and kind of let it go. Well, at the age of 14, the bullying started up again. We left Brooklyn, went to a beautiful neighborhood in Long Island, New Hyde Park. I'm thinking, it's going to be bliss. There's not going to be any, there's fighting, none of that. And no, the first day of school, it all started up again. Because the kids from Brooklyn left Brooklyn to go to New Hyde Park, Long Island. I'm like, you got to be kidding, I can't get away. And it was like, I mean, the first fight I had was a guy named William. We went outside, and he came at me, and I blitzed him with punches. Hit him, knock him to the ground. And I didn't go on top to finish that fight. I figured it's enough. I turn, I walk away, I feel a tap on my shoulder. He finished me, and he finished me good. My eye was closed shut. Hence, the continuation of the martial arts began again. Actually, I was trying to think how old I was at that point. I was 11. My dad just got me involved in just exercises. He still didn't teach me the martial arts yet, but that all came back in my teens and full force. And by the time I got so good at it, I must have had about 17 street fights. So by the time I got really good at my martial arts, it like stopped. When you don't feel that you're good enough, you're going to have problems if you don't stand up. And when you feel like you're too good and you're in your ego, you're going to have other problems. So there's got to be a harmony between those two things. Yeah.